What do we do when the masks come down? A personal study on replacing ADHD masking with moderation by Vibrant Chaos. Table of contents. Masking is exhausting, so I ain't gonna do it. Habit replacement. Masking to moderation. The powerful skill of relationship maintenance. Masking versus moderation. Conclusion. Masking is exhausting, so I ain't gonna do it. But every void asks to be filled. The social media sphere has been abuzz the past few years with tales of the underdog autistic, the girls and women with ADHD and high functioning autistic traits who flew, or in many cases sank, under the radar. Neglected, really, because that is what science has done and likely will continue to do. Prioritize the neurotypical cis white man's needs in health, education, and relationships. This means that girls and women have been conditioned in white colonialist cultures to put on masks for certain social situations at school and at work, in front of parents who are overwhelmed and under-resourced for their mental and emotional health needs, and in heteroromantic and or sexual partnership in which the socially dominant party is the other person. We wore these masks so frequently that they became semi-permanent. Some of us still walk around wearing a culturally conditioned mask in place to protect us from our culture's habit of rejecting or abandoning us in our time of need. For those of us who are aware now of the neurotypical binds that stifle our personalities, our strengths, and our most unique qualities, we have a new selection of options for preserving our full, bright, brilliant selves. On one end of the spectrum of options, no pun intended, we've got masking. Masking is the act of fawning in perpetuity. It consists of performative measures such as tonal shifts, conscious facial adjustments, and people-pleasing habits. This can look like playing a perfect hostess, even when you're the one who's sick and tired. This can sound like laughing at a modulated pitch or volume in order to replicate others in a social setting. This can feel like holding yourself back, hiding, putting in too much effort, dissociating, and overcompensating for perceived social cues. Masking takes an incredible amount of energy and cue the meme. I'm tired of this, Grandpa. Well, that's too damn bad. Which is captioned with ADHD people truly fed up with wearing the mask in parentheses S masks, because there are quite a few. And we're exhausted, Grandpa. Once you notice what your masking habits are, you're fucked. You begin to notice everything because for autistics, our special brain spice makes us hyper focus. You become aware of every single thing you're doing to mirror others or deflect from a sensory overstimulation response. Just now, I found myself cringing as though hearing a loud noise, all because I thought the words sensory overstimulation. And yes, this really did happen to me while I was writing this post. I literally flinched. You start to hear it in your conversations or watch yourself while you're alone. There is a spotlight that shines on those masks when they've been revealed as traitors to your authenticity. You can't unsee it. once you see masking happening in the tiniest of actions, it makes masking unsustainable. Because then not only are you efforting so dang hard to blend in, but you are also in your head about every time you do it, which leads to private burnout at best and public meltdowns at worst. This makes the other end of the spectrum in this self-awareness journey more appealing and in some ways more challenging. And I'm going to take a sip of water at this juncture. And I hope that you either get some water or tea or something. Kombucha is another good one for me. And you take care of yourself. Water break, drink break. Mm, okay, so I'll repeat. This makes the other end of the spectrum in this self-awareness journey, the other option, more appealing and in some ways more challenging. Unmasking is the other end of the spectrum and our next best option. It's a shedding of habitual reactions, the scripting you do in your head before a conversation, the performance of interest when you've already mentally moved on, the suppression of your own needs in order to generate greater feelings of comfort and ease for others. Unmasking is listening to your tics, noticing the volume of smell or sound that overstimulates you, and deliberately adjusting the amount of other people's bullshit you'll tolerate just to be tolerated by others. To unmask is to accept yourself, your brain and nervous system and gut and cellular makeup as affected by autism or ADHD or the combination of the two. Acceptance of how autism and or ADHD has played a role up until this point in your life is the first step when you make the choice to conscientiously unmask. The next step is to adapt your life to the way you are rather than continue with the exhausting upkeep of acting the way others wish you were. The act of unmasking is a cluster of deliberate decisions. It also creates a void where the mask used to be. And that means another habit has to take its place. Habit replacement, masking to moderation. A father-daughter case study on discernment. There isn't a single goddamn person I will mask for anymore. And even though I still have to stop myself from doing it here and there in triggering situations, I am aware of the behaviors that led me to the inauthentic life that had made me perpetually sick and lonely and trapped. So moving back in with my parents just a few months ago has been a real fucking trip. My parents and I are very different, as are most guardians from their offspring. Our generational planets have a lot to do with our vastly opposing values, but I digress. The point is, we're not often able to make connections that both parties are like really interested in. But I still make my best effort. For example, my dad got super into golfing since retirement, go figure, and swings his clubs at foam golf balls in the yard to practice his shot every day, most days. This is a new interest for him, so I've taken the time to hang out with him and practice my golf swing. He ended up inviting me to go golfing with him and my mom, and not to putt-putt. My first reaction was to play down the bid for connection with, sure, I'd go to a range. Really, what I was thinking was, ew, yuck, I would never pay to play at a golf course. The entire sport is rooted in white supremacy, gentrification, and pollution. I would never. I would never. But here, wait, I'm recording the audio and visual on Zoom, and I forgot there's the raise hand emoji. Oh, I have to raise my hand again to lower it. Wait. Oh no, I can just click it. That's hysterical. As I'm gesticulating. Oh my gosh. Okay, let me come back. Okay, really, what I was thinking to my dad's invitation to go golfing at a golf course, a golf club was, ew, yuck. I would never pay to play at a golf course. The entire sport is rooted in white supremacy, gentrification, and pollution. I would never. So here was the moment where I had to come to terms with an alternative to masking. Moderation. In lieu of yelling all of that previous internal dialogue at my dad's face, because that's how it would have come out if I'd said it when I meant it, I internalized the conflict and considered how I would turn him down without shutting him out. I value being actively anti-racist in my choices, but I don't see a reason to belittle my dad for his. Because I care about my dad, I couldn't lie to him either or lead him to think that there was a future in which I would ever say yes to golfing at a golf course. And I'm going to sip on that as well. Sorry, Dad. Not sorry. I considered how I would be genuine with my dad and also authentic to myself. This conundrum motivated me to explore moderation. Moderation is self-modulation, discernment, and restraint. There is a power to being uncensored for the first time after unmasking ADHD, and I have cherished the untethered person I got to be when I was freeing myself from the many masks I'd worn for decades. The chaos was liberating, if frightening. I didn't always feel secure with myself while being so very self-centered. Uh, be selfish as a newly liberated people pleaser, because at the time I didn't know it was autism. Be selfish became my motto, but it deteriorated the edges I'd refined because it made my big, dysregulated autistic reactions everyone else's problem. Living without any concept of self-restraint put the responsibility of emotional regulation and security in other people's hands. Still, the same as it was with giving up my emotional agency in order to people please. I swung from 0 to 100 during my people pleaser recovery, and a few people during that uncensored part of my life got hurt. I had revoked their right to consent to carrying all my baggage. I demanded co-regulation from everyone once I discovered it. It was like when people were all about the secret. It's like, have you heard of the secret? Have you heard about co-regulation? But I demanded it from everyone once I discovered it. And that was unfair to everyone, including me, because not every person is the right person to co-regulate with. Not every person is the right person to co-regulate with. I had to say it again for the ones watching the video or listening to the audio. After years of educating myself on how to be in right relationship with individuals and community, especially in shared group spaces, I carried with me an understanding that self-modulation is indeed a good thing for myself and for others. Moderation prevents seepage, the tendency for a person to pour themselves into every space they encounter without considering the specific, explicit context of the space or the inherent demand put on others to carry those parts that have been poured out. I also learned about leakage, the tendency for people to resolve or avoid conflicts with others by taking one's concerns outside of the relationship or the specific space in which the conflict arose. Both of these relational issues can eat away at trust or calcify existing issues. Neither align with the intention to maintain healthy relationships post unmasking, which makes moderation a social requirement. Moderating is not masking, though. It is the intentional effort to honor other people's energy, truth, and capacity by being discerning with your own. It's the way we can love and respect others without assuming that reciprocity can only happen if they accept and embrace us as deeply as we have accepted ourselves. We can be authentically ourselves and we can be kind to others we don't agree or totally align with. Moderation in the case of my dad's bid for connection looked like this. The next time he brought it up, I told him I believe golf courses are an irresponsible use of money and resources. I then told him I'm happy to keep swinging clubs in the front yard with him. He said, cool. That was it. I was honest and direct, true to myself and my grounded sense of justice, which we ADHDers are known for, and didn't dissuade my dad from making future bids for connection. I didn't seep all my feelings into the interaction either, and I didn't leak them outside of our interaction. I didn't put any masks on to people please or fawn. I didn't censor what I really think and feel. I moderated between the desire to express my opinions and the desire to be kind toward his. It was lovely to witness. My self-restraint allowed for my authenticity to remain intact while also loving my dad from the distance that feels right for both of us. The powerful skill of relationship maintenance. Polyamorist theory. Enjoy everyone from the distance that feels right for that relationship. Self-expression is one of the highest values for ADHDers because we've been told to be quiet for so long. Too sensitive, dramatic, too much talking, not good enough, messy, annoying. If you would like, you can leave a comment now to drop the ADHD complaint that was most frequently filed against you, because the list does go on. No matter how annoying or sensitive or chaotic someone is, though, they deserve love and are indeed lovable to many people, just in certain doses. Before I learned about polyamory, I started to understand the notion that relationships don't necessarily need to be all or nothing. The one became a silly fairy tale to me because it seemed unrealistic, especially after realizing that this concept mostly exists for the purpose of controlling women and access to the domestic and sexual desires of men. It was also a concept that clarified the dichotomy between having only one best friend and having many close friends, or dropping all your buddies as soon as you've got a romantic love interest and then expecting them to be there when you're single again. This all or nothing mentality destroyed a relationship with one of my high school besties. It blocked me from opening up a long-term relationship in my early 20s. It caused me incredible distress and grief every time I was left out of some gathering or fun that other friends were having. The idea that I needed to be the right person for every person I met was stretching me transparent. I didn't know if I really liked what I liked or loved who I loved because I wanted to be invited to the party and desperately wanted a boyfriend. The one and only all or nothing made me fucking miserable. The autistic in me was confused too. Aren't there rules? Isn't it true that relationships are distinct units of total reliability and safety in which I'm completely accepted and loved? Lightning, lightning. Shouldn't my bestie always back me up? Shouldn't my boyfriend be the love of my life? And if they don't, or they're not, then shouldn't I keep looking? Just trashing people left and right. Just completing relationships, ghosting left and right. Again, misery. Again, misery. Polyamory helped ground all of these questions in a reframe that saved my relationships with everybody. Polyamorist theory says that your bestie doesn't back you up if they think you're wrong. They hold you close while holding you accountable. It says that your college boyfriend doesn't have to be your forever boy, but instead can be an incredible mirror, nurturing the parts of you who need to be loved the most at that time. Polyamory is a kind of self-restraint that breaks down everything oppressive about how we connect in community and love. It's a model for liberated moderation that allows us to live unmasked while also accepting that your truth isn't everyone else's and that your weird little kinks are beloved to some and gross to others. The yuck and the yum are real, and that every one-on-one relationship you hold dear must also be held at a distance that allows both people to flourish and feel free. So, whether you've got a friend who you can only hang out with for 2 days, or a lover who you can dive into for weeks, or an acquaintance you can only handle in 2 hour increments, it is literally all love. Sibling theory, the joys of nuclear comedic refinement and nostalgia. Maybe my sister is one of those people I'll be able to get the distancing right with one day. For now, the distance between us feels vast. In spite of all the love you can have for a family member, there may still only be a few things that can bring you together. A friend of mine who felt like meeting again with a past life the first time I met her resonates with this. She and I have similar siblinghood woes, with siblings who struggled to understand us, or maybe aren't struggling at all and don't quite appreciate the lives we have built for ourselves. But we love them. We cherish them. We think they're the funniest people in the world, and we absolutely can't imagine our lives without them. The last time we hung out, she brought up the familiar song and dance we face as newly unmasked neurodivergence, being the drama in our families. My friend had her stories to share, while I mourned a very tender encounter with my sister. More on this in another post. We kept circling in our conversations back through the same loops in different ways, as most ADHD people do, by coming back to our relationships with our siblings. What we continued to find in those loops were threads of masking versus moderation, being ourselves truthfully in front of people who just don't fucking get it, as well as always being the one to forgive, to enter into conflict first, to welcome the other person's point of view, though they haven't asked for ours. We laughed and shed tears over the hardship of being the reason our families saw us in such stark contrast to themselves, as though we were trying to change their entire ways of being by being entirely and unapologetically different in our ways of being. While also desiring with all our big squishy hearts to love them fully and feel fully loved by them in return. What my friend brought up during all of this was a notion that stopped me in my tracks. What if, she said, our siblings are just the best and worsted parts of our childhood memories? We share the traumas, definitely, but we also pee our pants laughing on the reminiscence of weird moments and secret sibling things only we know about. This is where polyamorous theory intersects with sibling theory. There are certain people who you can love more honestly, more transparently, when you let go of everything you cannot be for each other. My sister can't be my best friend, but in our nuclear family, we have refined such a bizarre, Vine inspired, potty themed brand of humor that is unmatched anywhere else. Don't know anybody else who's so on brand. We can wade through our nostalgia together and keep those memories close, even while we let go of a past that divided us. Our reliable intersection is crying laughing before the other sibling has even finished the first sentence of a funny story. Why couldn't we rebuild our relationship in that place? My answer is that we can, and we could, without my feeling the need for masking, sure, but there are limits to moderation when there are years of hurt compounded into unspoken apologies and resentments. It's hard to imagine in this moment while I write this that the thing more reliable than our unique brand of humor and nostalgia isn't hypervigilance and grudges. It's hard to imagine that the thing more reliable than our unique brand of humor and nostalgia isn't hypervigilance and grudges. I don't just believe that moderation is an ADHD thing. Moderation is for everyone. People who don't have ADHD or other forms of neurodivergence must observe self-restraint too if they want to have equitable, healthy, fulfilling relationships. But moderating to the extent that you're on edge more often than not in a particular person's presence is not going to lead to an equitable, healthy, fulfilling relationship. The wider web, bonding with strangers on the internet. The amount of self-awareness what one must have to discern where the line between moderating the how much of me and straight up masking is pretty enormous. I know as I write this that folks may be reading this essay to understand specifically where that line is. Honestly, y'all, it gets blurry sometimes. What I do know is that safety built in a relationship in which you've been able to unmask is a wonderful space in which to test that line. So is the safety of anonymity on the internet. Some of you may already have heard this story that the second time I said I have herpes out loud was when I made my first YouTube video. I cried a lot and I was vulnerable with the whole world before I was open about my diagnosis with anyone else. The beauty of that moment was connecting with people on the internet who said, "Me too." The same can be said for neurodivergence of all kinds across the wide expanse of interwebs. We're all opening up and finding each other. The vulnerability is peak. The relationships we build and maintain in RL are laced with context. Work, school, or mutual friends may limit us from feeling truly comfortable in our skin and safe to be both unmasked and reasonably moderated. Like I said before, unmasking can be a challenge. And it's for this reason we have structures within our relational dynamics which feel like preventative measures against authenticity. In many ways, we are all spying on each other, surveilling for information we can use, and disrupting those around us by virtue of trying to get them to be more or less themselves. To put it simply, I know I'm guilty of making people uncomfortable by trying to get them out of their shell. And the same can be said for trying to shame people back into it. I have rage. I have rage and curiosity, motherfucker. Which is why, with the online surveillance that happens, we can become keenly aware of the line between masking and moderation. Folks can get thousands of followers being masked and unmoderated, while others can make a few genuine friends being unmasked and highly moderated. Maybe afraid to put yourself out there, since the internet is the Wild West and also forever, but also daring to attempt to be known, whatever that means to you. I have a best friend with whom I've had a mostly online relationship. We resonated with the same ADHD issues before we even knew the root cause was called ADHD. Like we found that out together. And we took trips to meet in person, to dance under the same moon. The unmasked versions of ourselves are how we saw each other first. More accurately, it was the unmasking versions mid-reveal. It was glorious and grotesque. Ah, it was awful and awesome. We bonded because while we had no external ties to each other than a mutual friend, what we learned over time was how to be unmasked to the world in small doses by being courageous on the World Wide Web with each other. We created our own holographic pocket dimension and explored everything, every notion, idea, fear, dream. We got to be virtually intimate in ways that in-person intimacy couldn't yet achieve. That level of unmasked bravery online in our own little pocket dimension on WhatsApp rippled out into the real world. She has published books on the ADHD unmasking experience and partnered with local shops to sell them. I've co-founded a seasonal poetry course and have been steadily uploading YouTube videos that go far beyond talking about herpes. Our unmasking digitally, privately, has strengthened our courage to reveal our authentic selves in a multitude of ways. Masking versus moderation. Conclusion. I am an advocate for unmasking. I think I've made that pretty clear. The authentic version of myself and others is infinitely preferable to the alternative. Bowing and scraping to others in the hopes that they'll breadcrumb you love. The ripples that come back to you when you do that are big ol' sad tsunamis, and nobody deserves that. My one caveat about unmasking, though, is we cannot unfold ourselves to the detriment of our healthiest, most secure relationships. It's like pulling off Spanx after years of barely breathing and finally allowing the flub and the stretch marks and dimples to not only show, but really hang all the way out. And the problem with this is, while unmasking means accepting ourselves, it does not preclude or absolve us from allowing others the space to accept us at their own pace and in their own way. It's how we sometimes arrive at seepage, and seepage is how unmasking without moderation crosses the line. The people whom we love, whom we can trust not to reject our unmasked selves, deserve space, time, and the energy to be their authentic selves too. Our unfolding, our mutual collective unfolding, inevitably inspires other unfolding. Your unfolding inspires their unfolding. And then all of these folds overlapping starts to get messy. Everybody starts ripping their Spanx off. And taking up space means something completely different that requires boundaries. In other words, it requires moderation. Moderation. This may be, this may be the hardest lesson for formally high functioning autistics to learn because we struggle with nuance. Yay! We're great with rules, but when they feel punishing or a friend's boundary steps over the line of one of our triggers, we freak out. We freak out a little bit. Once we've tasted freedom, we want it in abundance. We want to binge on it, lest we purge the people who restrict our perceived freedoms. We want to be unregulated, like all the neurotypicals who don't have a fucking clue how they affect other people. We want to remain steadfast in the self-affirmation we've arrived at after years, decades, lifetimes. But that means we cut off people who hurt us just once in order to get it, or run away when the version of ourselves we've unmasked doesn't fit with the people we've surrounded ourselves with. We move to different states, cut or dye our hair, get tattoos, sleep with strangers, text that ex, all just to avoid learning to self-modulate. That's leakage. Looking everywhere but the source to resolve conflicting notions of how to be. Why can't we expect others to handle the all and everything we've learned to love about ourselves through the process of unmasking? Kellyanne, what the fuck? Why can't we expect others to handle that all and everything we've learned to love about ourselves through the process of unmasking? It's because relationships are still real, tender, raw, and vulnerable, even when they're healthy and secure. They require that we blend self-awareness with interpersonal awareness. They require the living breath of compassion, space, intimacy, and respect. Again, moderation is for everyone to practice and for everyone to benefit from. As neurodivergent people find ourselves challenged by the conventions that make for healthy relationships, like honoring boundaries and having direct conflict, or taking time away to process feelings and ask questions, we still understand that these we still understand that these are skills we must learn in order to have trusting, reliable relationships. It can be hard to imagine not trying to read a room and react to it with all the habitual masking efforts, but instead to connect with the flawed, scared, living humans in the room through genuine inquiry and mutual compassion. We still must do our best to try, making no assumptions and taking nothing personally, while simultaneously taking people at their word. Because the reality is, even the most resilient relationships will inevitably trigger our sense of safety and security, authenticity and integrity, and motivate us to retreat into our oldest wounds. Rejecting people before they can officially reject us, hiding away with our hurt instead of giving others a chance to repair, and abandoning the project altogether may be our first impulses. These old avoidance patterns are unsustainable. The process of unmasking reveals our true selves and also reveals that those masked habits never really worked in the past. That's because those patterns were attempts to unmask without an understanding of moderation. Is moderation worth the effort? For neurodivergent people who have been to therapy and or tended to their inner garden, unmasking becomes more and more worth the effort every time someone appreciates something we never used to unveil about ourselves. Unmasking is ultimately an intimating process because it can only happen in the context of our relationships with others. The masks we wore were for other people, and now they're not there anymore. Some people will hate that, but the people who genuinely love us will be grateful to truly see us. Unmasking, for me, has been well worth all the effort. But is moderation worth the effort? On the surface, it's more work for the exhausted neurodivergents. And we're tired, Grandpa. Finding out that your ADHD diagnosis helps you to explain your behaviors doesn't explain the bad behaviors away. Unmasking is not an excuse for you to leave all of the self-restraint and emotional maturing as labor for everyone else to do. Additionally, moderation isn't only for autistics to learn in lieu of unmasking. Moderation is a soft skill that everyone must learn in lieu of living out our worst relational habits. If self-awareness is the first goalpost for deepening relationships, and self-compassion is the next goalpost for healing relationships, then the third is self-modulation. It's the refinement of our impulses in conjunction with attunement to our environment. It's the step we take so that we can harmonize in our relationships, honoring where everyone's at on their best and worst days, and accepting that the price of being human is being a little fucked up together. Is being a little fucked up together. Moderation isn't masking, rebranded. Moderation is trust, respect, and controlling only that which we can control ourselves. Thank you for listening. I'd love to hear your thoughts and to keep connecting with you if you resonated with this. So be sure to comment, whether you're listening on Substack or YouTube, and please subscribe. In addition, if you've got people you love who are unmasking too, or in the process of learning about their ADHD isms, share this with them as well. I love to have this little chat with them. Thanks for listening, y'all.